Lantern of the Path, a collection of hadith by Imam Jafar al Sadiq alayhi salam, Part 4, Section 30, The Honor and Sanctity of the Believers. No one respects the honor of the believers except the person who respects the honor and sacred claim of Allah over the believers. The person who best fulfills the sacred claim with respect to Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam is he who is the most particular in his respect for the believer's claim to honor. Whoever thinks little of the believer's honor has rent apart the raiment of his belief. The Holy Prophet ﷺ said, "Part of esteem for Allah is to respect those who are near to Allah in belief." And again, whoever is not merciful to a young person nor respectful to an old person is not one of us. Do not call a Muslim an unbeliever when repentance can make up for it, unless he is someone that Allah has mentioned in His book. Allah said, "The hypocrites are in the lowest level of the fire," in chapter 4, verse 145. Occupy yourself with your business about which you will be questioned. Section 31, Dutifulness to Parents. Dutifulness to one's parents comes from the bondsman's correct knowledge of Allah, since there is no act of worship which will bring the person performing it more quickly to the pleasure of Allah than being dutiful to believing parents for the sake of Allah. This is because the right of the parents is derived from the right of Allah, as long as they are both on the path of the faith and the sunnah, and do not prevent a child from obeying Allah for the sake of obedience to them, or move him from certainty to doubt, or from abstinence to the desires of this world, or call him to anything which is in opposition to faith and the sunnah. If the situation is like that, then it is an act of obedience to rebel against them, and an act of rebellion to obey them. Allah said, "If they contend with you that you should associate with me what you have no knowledge of, do not obey them. Keep company with them kindly in this world, but follow the way of him who turns to me. Then to me is your return," in chapter 31, verse 15. As far as companionship is concerned, keep their company and be gentle with them. Endure their hardship just as they endured yours when you were young. And do not withhold from them that which Allah has made plentiful for you in the way of food and clothes. Do not turn your face away from them, nor raise your voice above theirs. To respect them is part of Allah's command. Speak to them in the best possible way and be kind to them. Allah will not let the reward of those who do good go to waste. Section 32, Humility. Humility embraces every precious and noble rank and high position. If humility had a language which people understood, it would speak about the realities which are hidden in the outcomes of affairs. Humility is whatever is undertaken for Allah and in Allah, and anything other than that is trickery. Whoever is humble to Allah, Allah will honor over many of His bondsmen. The people of humility have recognizable signs. When one of them was asked about humility, he said, "It means you're humble to the truth and follow it, even if you hear it from a child." Many types of pride keep one from using, accepting, and following knowledge. There are certain verses about this, denouncing the haughty. The people of humility have signs recognized by the angels in heaven and the Gnostics on earth. Allah said, "On the most elevated places there shall be men who know all by their marks," in chapter 7, verse 46. And elsewhere, "Whoever from among you turns back from his faith, then Allah will bring a people whom He loves and they shall love Him, humble towards the believers, mighty against the unbelievers," in chapter 5, verse 54. Allah said, "Surely the most honorable of you with Allah is the one among you with the greatest precaution," in chapter 49, verse 13. And "Do not attribute purity to your souls," in chapter 53, verse 32. The root of humility comes from the majesty, awe, and immensity of Allah. Allah is not pleased with any act of worship, nor does He accept it unless it comes with humility. No one knows what is the true meaning of humility except those of His bondsmen who are close and connected with His unity. Allah said, "The servants of the merciful are they who walk on earth in humbleness, and when the ignorant address them, they say peace," in chapter 25, verse 63. He commanded the mightiest of His creation and the master of its people, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, to be humble, saying, "Make yourself gentle to the believers," in chapter 15, verse 88. From humility grows submission, humility, fear, and modesty. It is only from within humility that these qualities appear. True and perfect nobility is only given to those who are humble in the essence of Allah. Section 33, Ignorance. Ignorance is a form whose composition is of this world. When it advances, there is darkness. When it retreats, there is light. The bondsman vacillates with it as shadows vacillate with the sun. Have you not looked at man? Sometimes you find that he is ignorant of his own qualities and praises them, while he recognizes their faults in others and criticizes them. At other times you find that a person knows his own nature and criticizes it, while praising the same in others. He vacillates between protection and disappointment. If he encounters integrity and protection, he's correct. If he encounters lack of assistance and desertion, he errs. The key to ignorance is being satisfied with the knowledge one possesses and placing all one's trust in it. The key to knowledge is the desire to exchange one level of knowledge for a higher level, together with divine grace and guidance. The lowest quality of an ignorant man is that he lays claim to knowledge which he does not deserve. His most common characteristic is ignorance of his own ignorance, and the most extreme aspect of his ignorance is to reject knowledge. There is nothing whose affirmation is the reality of its negation other than worldly ignorance and greed. All ignorant people are alike. Section 34, Eating. A little food is praiseworthy in every case and with all people, because it is salutary for the outer and the inner being. Eating is praiseworthy when done out of necessity, as a means and provision at a time of plenty, or for nourishment. Eating out of necessity is for the pure. Eating as a means and provision is a support for the precautious. Eating at a time of plenty is for those who trust, and eating for nourishment is for believers. There is nothing more harmful to the believer's heart than having too much food, for it brings about two things: hardness of heart and arousal of desires. Hunger is a condiment for believers, nourishment for the spirit, food for the heart, and health for the body. The Holy Prophet ﷺ said, "The son of Adam fills no worse vessel than his belly." David ﷺ said, "Leaving a morsel of food that I need is preferable to me than staying up for 20 nights." The Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, "The believer eats to fill one stomach, and the hypocrite 7. And elsewhere, woe to people who were swollen in 2 places. When he was asked what they were, he replied, "The stomach and the genitals." Isa ﷺ said, "The heart does not have any worse disease than hardness, and no soul has been more weakened than by lack of hunger. They are 2 halters of banishment and disappointment." Section 35, Evil Whispering. Satan can get control over Allah's servants only by whispering to them when they have abandoned their remembrance of Allah, become disdainful, feel complacent when faced with his prohibition, and forget that Allah sees their secret. Whispering is what comes from outside the heart by tacit permission of the intellect, and is sustained by man's own nature. Once it becomes established in the heart, there is error, misguidance, and disbelief. Allah called on his bondsmen with his subtle call and told them about the enmity of Iblis. Shaitan is an enemy to you, so take him as an enemy, in chapter 35, verse 6. Be with him like a man who, standing near the shepherd's dog, has recourse to the dog's master in order to keep the dog away from him. It is the same when Satan comes to whisper to you, to lead you off the true path and make you forget to remember Allah. Then seek refuge from him with your Lord and his Lord. He will defend the truth against falsehood and help wronged ones, since he says, "Surely he has no authority over those who believe and who rely on their Lord," in chapter 16, verse 99. Man will only be able to do this if he knows how he comes and can recognize his methods of whispering by constant watchfulness, sincerity in the arena of service, awe of the all-aware, and increased remembrance of him. However, anyone who neglects to spend his time in awareness must undoubtedly be the prey of Satan. He should draw a lesson from what Satan does with such a person's self. He leads it to misguidance, deception, and haughtiness by duping the person into admiring his own actions, his worship, and his insight. Satan's insolent behavior towards him causes a curse to descend on his knowledge, his gnosis, and faculty of reasoning for all eternity. Yet he has no power over those who are not negligent. Therefore, hold to the firmest rope of Allah, which means seeking refuge with Allah, and having a sound need of Allah at every breath. Do not be deceived when Satan makes your acts of obedience appear beautiful in your eye. If he opens 99 doors of goodness for you, it is only so that he may overcome you by opening the 100th. So meet him with opposition, block his path, and reject his charm. Section 36, Pride. The concept of pride embraces all those aspects of vanity found in those who are proud of their actions, little knowing what their end will be. Whoever is proud of himself and his actions has strayed off the path of right guidance and has claimed what is not his. Anyone who claims something to which he has no right is a liar, even if he conceals his claim for a long time. The first thing which happens to the proud man is that he is stripped of his object of pride, so that he will know that he is contemptible and incapable and will testify against himself, and that he will be a firmer proof against him. This was the case with Iblis. Pride is a plant whose seed is disbelief, whose earth is hypocrisy, and whose water is transgression. Its branches are ignorance, its leaves are misguidance, and its fruit is being cursed to remain in the fire forever. Whoever chooses pride has sowed disbelief and cultivated hypocrisy. It is inevitable that it must bear its fruit, and he will end up in the fire. Section 37, Generosity. Generosity is part of the nature of the prophets and the buttress of belief. A person cannot be a believer unless he is also generous. He must also have certainty and high aspiration, because generosity is a ray of the light of certainty. Effort is easy for him who knows his objective. The Holy Prophet ﷺ said, "The friend of Allah is but naturally disposed to generosity." Generosity is bestowed upon everyone beloved of Allah who has little of this world. One of the signs of generosity is a lack of concern with the wealth of this world and with whoever owns it, believing or unbelieving, obedient or rebellious, noble or low. The generous man feeds others while he himself is hungry. He clothes others while he is naked. He gives to others while he refuses to accept the gifts of others. He is favored by that and does not indebt others by his graciousness. If he were to possess the entire world, he would see himself merely as an alien in it. If he spent it all for Allah in a single hour, it would not be irksome for him. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ said, "The generous person is near to Allah, near to people, near to the garden, and far from the fire. The miser, however, is far from Allah, far from people, far from the garden, and near to the fire." The only person who can be called generous is the one who expends himself to obey Allah and for the sake of Allah, even if it is only by a loaf of bread or a drink of water. The Holy Prophet ﷺ also said, "The person who is generous with what he owns, and through it desires the face of Allah. As for that person who pretends to be generous and rebels against Allah, he is a recipient of Allah's wrath and anger. He is the most miserly of people towards himself. So how must he be with other people when he follows his own passion and opposes the command of Allah? As Allah said, 'Most certainly they shall carry their own burdens and other burdens along with their own burdens,' in chapter 29, verse 13. The Holy Prophet ﷺ said, "The son of Adam cries out, 'My property, my property, my wealth, my wealth.' O wretch, where were you when there was the kingdom and you were not? Is there anything more than what you eat and consume, or what you wear and wear out, or what you give in charity and what you make last? Either you are shown mercy by it, or you are punished for it. Therefore use your intelligence, and understand that you should not love the property of others more than your own." The Commander of the Faithful ﷺ said, "What you have already given was destined for those who now own it. What you have held back is for those who will inherit it. And what you have now you have no power over, except to become arrogant by it. How much you strive to seek this world and to make claims. Do you wish to impoverish yourself and enrich others?" Section 38, Self-Reckoning. If there were nothing to make a person turn to self-reckoning, other than shame at being presented before Allah and the disgrace of having the veil torn away from his secrets, man would throw himself from the mountain tops and not seek refuge in a building, nor eat, nor drink, nor sleep, except when necessary for preserving his life. This is how a person behaves when he sees the resurrection, with all its terrors and hardships, with every breath he takes. In his heart he looks at the time when he will stand before the compelling one, and when he takes account of himself, it is as if he were being summoned to the presentation before Allah, and is being questioned in his death throes. Allah said, "Even though there be the weight of a mustard seed, yet will we bring it, and sufficient are we to take account," in chapter 21, verse 47. One of the Imams alayhi salam said, "Take reckoning from yourselves before you are called to reckoning. Weigh your actions with the scale of your own fear of shame before they are weighed for you." Abu Dhar rahmatullah alayhi said, "The mention of the garden is death, and so is the mention of the fire. What a wonder that a person's self lives between two deaths." It is related that Yahya alayhi salam used to reflect for the entire night on the garden and the fire, so that his night was spent in wakefulness and he did not sleep. Then in the morning he would say, "O Allah, whither can one flee? Where can one stay? O Allah, one can only flee to you." Section 39, Opening the Prayer. When you face the Qibla, you should despair of this world, what it contains of creation, and what others are occupied with. Empty your heart of every preoccupation which might distract you from Allah. See the immensity of Allah with your innermost being, and remember that you will stand before Him. For Allah has said, "There shall every soul become acquainted with what it sent before, and they shall be brought back to Allah, their true patron," in chapter 10, verse 30. Stand at the foot of fear and hope. When you recite the takbir, you should belittle what is between the high heavens and the moist earth, which are all below His glory. For when Allah looks into the heart of His bondsman while he is saying the takbir, and sees in his heart something obstructing the truth of his declaring that Allah is great, He says, "O liar, do you try to deceive me? By my might and my majesty, I will deny you the sweetness of my remembrance, and I will veil you from my nearness, and from joy in my intimate communion. Know that Allah does not need your service. He is independent of you, your worship, and your supplication. He summons you by His favor to show you mercy, to put you far from His punishment, to spread some of the blessings of His kindness over you, to guide you to the path of His pleasure, and to open to you the door of His forgiveness. If Allah had created what He created in the universe many times over, forever without end, it would still be the same to Allah whether they all rejected Him or united with Him. All that He has from the worship of creatures is the display of His generosity and power. Therefore, make modesty your cloak and incapacity your shawl. Enter under the throne of the power of Allah, and you will capture the benefits of His lordship, seeking help in Him and asking for His succor.